Hello, I'm Raff Wilson, Vice President of Artistic Planning for the Seattle Symphony. Thank you for tuning in to this Goethe pop-up video. In June this year, we planned a major project to celebrate the 250th anniversary of Beethoven's birth. Unfortunately, COVID-19 took a hand and we've had to postpone those plans. But Seattle will hear the new pieces and the Beethoven symphonies that we wanted to give you just as soon as we can get together again. Meantime, this is a good moment to talk about those new pieces that we commissioned, about how they tie into the figure of Beethoven and what kind of music they are. And to do that, I'm very happy to be joined by Thomas Dausgaard, our music director, and Paul Chiyokten Wagner, a storyteller and flutist. Paul, I'll start with you because this piece is built around a story called The Two Sisters. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself in our language. Osiem Nastjelicha Siem, Chiyokten Sinisnat, Chileitsin Husanich. I am Chiyokten from Husanich Nation, and it's good to be here and an honor to stand with you and to talk about the work that we're doing. The twin sisters story, two sisters story. It's a story of a family that got separated in a storm in our ocean-going canoes, and our canoes are very large. They're the biggest one found was 60 feet. It was larger than the Viking ships, on Vancouver Island. And the story is of a storm that happened to a particular family, where that part of the family got separated as a child. One of the twins, the two sisters, got swept away and got adopted by a family that was very shushabab and poor, and they had lost all of their teachings, of respect for Mother Earth and in the way that we kept our sacred promise to the circle of life, and they became very warlike, and that really put a detriment on their land and their waters and all the food supplies and everything, even the deer, because the promise was no longer spoken to the deer. They wouldn't be around anymore, and the promise was not spoken to the steenach, the salmon, anymore. And so the salmon started not coming up the rivers, and they became very hungry, and then they went to war with other people to take from them and take away their sacred things. And but the other girl, she grew up with her family in the Chiyokten in the longhouse, and she had all the elders still, because the other sister, where she went, they had only one elder and no one listened to her. She was like put away, and nobody really cared about her words anymore. But the other Aitzlani, the one sister who grew up in the longhouse, she had so many elders, all around her, sharing the most beautiful teachings of how you would give that word to that being, even a plant. Before you'd cut it, you would give a promise to it, a sacred, utter words of sacred promise that I would only take part of your family to help my family. And so she was full and rich. She became a rich person. She became a Hiwak, the chief of her people, and she kept a lot of peace, balance, and harmony. And then the other Lani, the other twin, she ended up being a leader too, and ended up participating in a lot of wars and a lot of terrible things. And the wars got so bad that there was no more food, and there was no peace anywhere, and they couldn't rest, and there was fear that they wouldn't even wake up, in the night. And so they got tired of living that way. And the grandmother would always try and talk to the one elder they had would try and talk to this young girl, but she didn't want to listen. And the elder pleaded to her, "Go on the mountain, please, and ask the Creator. The Creator will help you and give you instruction." And she wouldn't do it. But after that elder passed on, she finally went up on the mountain. She said, "Okay, I will, because it's so bad for our people." And then she really went up there and prayed and talked to the Creator, and Creator gave instruction, said, I will help you with all of this that you have created, all of this unrest and war and disrespect that you have brought to your people in the land and water. And you'll set out on a journey and you head off to the east. And so she did, and she traveled, and she traveled way beyond her land, and she came upon a land that was really rich and it was really beautiful. And the salmon were filling the estuaries and filling the rivers, and the ancient trees were everywhere. And the sounds were beautiful to her. She had hardly even heard them before. She could hardly recognize the sounds because they were so peaceful. And so there she met people in a longhouse, and they welcomed her in and gave her food, and she felt really good. And then through the door came their leader, and the leader looked at this girl, and they were adults now, and looked at this woman rather, and said, Chane, oh my, it's me. Because they're twins, she was looking at herself, and they discovered they were relatives, and they became really good friends. And the chief of that longhouse that she came upon decided to go back to her lands to help her people because they were so poor and had turned around and become so backwards and so harmful in their way to Mother Earth and all the people. And so she went back there and traveled with other elders, and they sat with the children, and they shared all those beautiful Mother Earth's teachings, and shared the words of the sacred promise to the circle of life, and that renewed their world. Their world began to be restored, and peace and balance and harmony came back to those people from the elders. And it's the elders is where we get our education, and so that place that still had those elders, and we're able to educate the children and share those teachings that the world was renewed at that point. And so that's a very brief summary of the story, but yeah, our world is in a place where we need to think about how we have relationship. What is our relationship to all of the beings? What is it to the water even? Do we see that water as people, to have a spirit? Because our people know that the Creator created everything with intention, so that we know that we were created with intention, given us Sali, a spirit, and now we know that we must create that way too. And so when we create that way, we say, what is our intention? Our intention is only to do this, and it will be very specific, and that will create balance and peace and harmony if we know exactly what every action is intended for. Is it good, or will it do harm, or is it disrespect? Now we create that paradisical world. And so they managed to return to that place of paradise. And I believe in this story of the two sisters, and I believe that this world can do that too, because our people live in two worlds. Our native people, our indigenous first peoples of these lands of Turtle Island, we have to live in two worlds. We have to educate ourselves in the ancient ways of our people and know all the laws, know all the rules. It's not easy to be an Indian, is what our old people say. You have lots of rules, a lot of rules that the other people don't care about. They don't care about them. They don't know them, but we must know them. And then that way we can educate, And then we must know all the ways of the Quinitum world. And we must know those ways too, so that we can survive in this world, and prayerfully someday we'll thrive in this world, instead of just survive.
Thank you, Paul. And it's a beautiful story. Out of it comes the piece, which is called Potlatch Symphony. And can you tell us just a little bit about what potlatch means?
Oh yeah, potlatch. It's a way of our people, and so many of our people have this way here in Coast Salish and other territories. it comes from a old word called pashels. And but the British they didn't, or maybe didn't want to pronounce pashels. So they said, oh, it's a potlatch. So then we have potlatches. But it's the same thing, you know, and it means that we give, we share, and we would gather things and make things for 2 years, and we would, the only time that we gathered anything and held on to anything was to give it away. And so our way was of gathering to give, to show the people, our house leader people, chieftain people, if you will, would gather and have family make beautiful blankets and canoes and all kinds of things to give away that the people needed, baskets and all forms of things, and the very best of the things that you can make. And you would stockpile them in your house for 2 years, and then you would send out runners to announce that you're having a potlatch, and you'd gather up, know how many people came from each community way far away across the mountains, and they would come and they would let you know how many are going to show up, and then you'd prepare the food and you'd feast, and then you'd have the ceremony for days and days of giving. And that's and it means to give, to share. And so our chieftain people impoverish themselves. That's the way of our people. It's very interesting. If you took the colonial world that we're taught to take and grab and do that for ourselves, you know, and or only our immediate family, but our way is to almost the opposite. If you take it and flip it on its head, it's to give and give and give until you can't give anymore, until you've impoverished yourself, and then somebody else gives and gives and gives, and then it's like a big kind of like a big swap meet. But people get everyone has a potlatch, you know, and then so you get things, other people make beautiful things, and so one of my elders said, well, we never had birthdays, you know, because it was like every day was our birthday. We have a whole new, when we wake, we get, it's like a birth of a new life. You get another chance. And besides, we had potlatches all the time, they said. So you're always getting gifts, you know.
Right. But tell me, so it's a very interesting story, and I can think of many things from what you just said that would tie into a piece of music. But what was the process, and how did you create the work that we're going to hear on stage? There were collaborators, of course. There was Janice Kitek, and also Swil Karnam. How did it fit together, and how did you start?
Yeah. Well, we started in ceremony. We always our old ways is begin in a prayer and end in a prayer. So we say this world is a spiritual world, and we're in that, and so we have to begin that way. So we began that way as we met up, and then we talked about, we all shared our heart, and that's our old way. We just speak, let everyone speak and see what they're feeling, you know, not necessarily what are you thinking, but what are you feeling? What is your feeling with what's going on in the world right now? What's going on in your life? What's going on with music? And so we talked about the things that we felt and would see, and the thing that I feel and see is the tradition and the ways of peace, and the ways that we held peace, and how we might involve a storytelling that may explain our laws of Mother Earth, and how we accepted them, and how these things are at the center of who we are, and that they're the very core of our being, that we are keepers of the sacred promises to lift up the circle of life. That's who we are as Indigenous people. And so, you know, along with the musical aspects that we could add with Swil Karnam's mastery on the violin and native flute and storytelling, and the beautiful work that Janice does, and Thomas and Jeremy. So yeah, we came up with that concept, and we really liked that idea, I think, collectively, and move forward with it from there.
Thomas, welcome back. Can you tell us about your role with this piece? How did you approach this project and putting it together?
Beginning as music director in this season, I felt incredibly lucky that it fell at the same time as the obvious moment to celebrate Beethoven. And Beethoven has always been at the center of my musical existence. And for me to do a Beethoven cycle with the Seattle Symphony would be very, very meaningful in many ways. Of course, Beethoven was an idealist, and with most of his major works, including the symphonies, he is talking about, like Paul said, a world of paradise. He is giving us a vision for a better world, and in that way, I thought we want to involve people in Seattle to give us their vision of a better world too. And not only that, but also because, of course, in the Ninth Symphony, Beethoven expresses in the text the ideal that we should all be brothers. And in that way, again, I feel, of course, Seattle Symphony is on stage, but our stage belongs to, in a way, to everybody here. We are not here to create a strong border between us performers and our community. On the contrary, we want to share that stage with our community. And this was an opportunity to do it together with our Beethoven performances. And one of my strong wishes since being appointed in Seattle was to make music with Native Americans. And I from the moment I met Paul, I felt so inspired and so enriched by our conversation and everything Paul would tell me, that I was sure this would be something fantastic for me and for the orchestra and hopefully for the audience too. Because Paul comes so directly out of this strong tradition, which we can learn so much from. And when he tells us the tale of the two sisters, I couldn't help now thinking that, of course, that tale is embedded in some ways in most great works of in our Western tradition too, just in slightly different ways. But the conflict between, well, like the two sisters, we find in all great works, and so we do find them in the Beethoven symphonies. And my wish was, of course, to have that ideal world represented, but also musically, very important for me to learn from the various groups of the community in Seattle. And for the Native Americans and Paul, who I admire as a musician very much, I've said to him so many times, it is so important for me that when we make music with you, you really teach us how it should be, that it is not somewhere in between, that you don't give in, really make us phrase it, make it speak in the way you would like it to speak. And that I'm really looking forward to. As a kind of mediator, Janis is putting this wonderful work together where we can actually meet as musicians and hopefully as idealists as well.
Thomas, I've been asking in each of these sessions a little bit about our idea of Beethoven as a romantic hero, as maybe something of a loner, certainly a nonconformist, and how one squares that conception of him with music made like this, music made with people collaborating in the creation of it and in the conception of it. Do you feel that there's a tension there? Is there a gap between those two things?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have the luxury of us being familiar with so many different cultures around the world, and I think he would have enjoyed the meeting with a strong culture like the Native American culture, and it is really in that spirit I approach it. I think I have my curiosity from Beethoven, expanding his own limits and borders, and we are in a way mirroring that. We want to look beyond what we thought was possible, and that is what he's doing in all his music, I think.
Yeah. And so, Paul, can you tell us a little more about when people attend this concert and hear the music, they'll hear that story that you've just told us. What else is in the music? What will people experience?
Yeah, well, they will experience ceremony also, as we did in our first Potlatch Symphony. We would come into the house in a prayerful song, and last time we used the Dokwi song, and that's a changer song, and that's the name of the creator here where I live in the Squamish People's Territory, and near Seattle. And so you know, that song is a way of asking the creator, but our creator is named Dokwi and translates to the changer. So everything in our world as Coast Salish, we know that was created through change. So in other words, everything out there was once something else, and then the creator saw that it wasn't the way that it should be, and maybe it was delivering a harm, and then changed them into the trees, skalelnach, the trees, you know, like that. It means the giants brought into peace, you know, because the trees were once giants, and they played games with our people, and then but eventually they became to the point where they heard our people and got satisfaction from it. And so the Dokwi or Chachachels, the changer, witnessed it and then changed them into the giant trees and put their feet in the ground, and now they can't hurt us anymore, you know. And so our world is magical that way. So we come down the aisle speaking directly to Dokwi and saying, make our minds right, make our first mind right, our heart right, and our body right, and make everything well in this world. Make everything as you intended it to be, in peace, balance, and harmony. And so, in other words, that's the meaning behind that song. And so that's the one of the beautiful things, is that people get to experience a little bit of our light ceremony, you know, in that way. And then the music inside the story, really looking forward to the collaboration of Janice, you know, and her writing, and then placement of within certain areas in the song, we would be placing native flute to express the feelings in the story, and Swilcanum's violin, and to communicate the things that would need to be communicated in that way, and in collaborating with Seattle Symphony Orchestra. And yeah, it's I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a very magical collaboration along with Thomas and everybody. It's just yeah, I'm excited. So yeah, it's something that really hasn't happened before. It's a concept that I'm not sure has been brought to the world at this point, and so it is pretty revolutionary as far as the coming together of the two worlds, just as the story speaks of, and musicians from different places of education and music, and how music is created and where it's created from, and yet all music is from a place of inspiration, right? So you know, that from the spirit, right? Brought from the spirit, inspiration. So yeah, that's the part that I most cherish in the collaboration, that we have that intention to inspire and receive that inspiration as we're writing. So yeah, very exciting.
I have to say, I'm inspired too hearing this story, and I can't wait for you to share this piece. So thank you so much for telling us a little bit about it, Paul, and thank you, Thomas, very much also.
Yeah,
my pleasure.